I was first introduced to Mr. Bedell and his advertising theories back in 1987. I had just gotten a divorce, and the ex-wife, she got the equity in the five houses, and I got a 5-gallon bucket of pennies and an old red pickup truck in my mind, so I won. I had used the 5-gallon bucket of pennies to go out there and buy myself a bunch of business cards that said I was an advertising agent. And I happened to walk into this one store. It was a carpet dealership, and they had just bought Mr. Bedell's 300-page book on how to make high profit carpet advertising. They paid $300 for it in 1987. $300. That was a lot of money. It'd be over $1,000 today. Anyway, they threw the book on my desk and they said, "Look, kid, we just bought this book." This was 1987. It was the time when the stock market crashed in 1987, and I remember that day. Everybody was all worried about the stock market crashing. Well, anyway, they threw this Mr. Bedell's carpet advertising book on my lap and said, "Here, you go take this home and study it and tell us why we should be spending $5,000 a month." I took it home, and I swear to God, this was the most wonderful book I had ever read on advertising. Although it was all about carpet, but I could see clearly that it was much beyond carpet because it was all about selling almost anything. And so that's how I became acquainted with Mr. Bedell and his advertising methods. Bedell, way back in the 1930s, in 1935, he was brought in to help Ford Motor Company because Ford had been getting their butt kicked for 10 years by General Motors. Every year for 10 years, General Motors outsold them. But they brought in Mr. Bedell, and he did an advertising trick that skyrocketed their sales. The year before they brought him in, they did I think 108,000 cars, and then when they brought him in, his little advertising trick skyrocketed the car sales up to 800,000 cars. Man, what was this trick? I'll tell you. In the science of advertising using Bedell's method, one of his main principles, he's got six. One of his main principles is that people buy only to get benefits. People buy only to get benefits. So, Mr. Bedell in 1935, he rewrote the book, the booklet that, you go into the car showroom and they have a booklet about the car, and all of these car dealers, General Motors included, have these booklets about the cars. And at the time, it was the style to put thumb tabs in the booklets to, so you could find your way through it. But typically speaking, the thumb tabs were feature driven. Feature driven. So here's the thumb tab on the drivetrain. Here's the thumb tab on the body. Here's the thumb tab on the engine. Well, Mr. Bedell knew that because of his scientific advertising principled approach, that people buy only for benefits. They don't buy an engine, they don't buy a drivetrain, they don't buy a body. What do they buy? They buy power, they buy fuel economy, they buy styling, they buy the envy of the Joneses. So he rewrote the entire Ford presentation showroom book to have the thumb tabs and the copy inside to be benefit driven, not feature driven. And it forced all the salesmen across the country, the Ford salesmen across the country, when they were flipping through the book, to talk about benefits. Oh, let me talk about the fuel economy and the power, the acceleration power. People buy acceleration power, but they don't buy cubic inches in an engine. They don't buy the inches in the engine, they buy acceleration power. Anyway, so he forced all the salesmen to talk about benefits and not features. Whereas over at General Motors, They foolishly were talking about the features of their car. They were talking about drivetrain, cubic inches, body, style, paint. Nobody buys paint, they buy beauty. So the Ford salesmen were talking about beauty. The GM salesmen were talking about paint. So, as a result, for the first time in 10 years, Ford Motor Company kicked General Motors' butt and sold more cars than they did. Anyway, so I got my acquaintance in 1987 with Bedell's method. And that's why throughout the past many years, those who use Bedell's advertising techniques to sell benefits as opposed to features, they conquer it. They sell more, they beat their competition, they have a nicer life, they have better income. Okay. Hopefully you go through the text part of whatever's accompanying this video, and let's see if we can intrigue you as far as doing better advertising. You can either buy the Bedell books and become educated yourself, or you can hire me, as I have studied his method thoroughly for many years and have put it into practice in many situations, selling furniture and cars and financial information and publications and vitamins and health food products and wholesale, retail, services, professional services, you name it. I've used Bedell's method to move millions upon millions of dollars worth of product. It would behoove you to give me a call. 801-895-9598.